Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered and Intentional. Thank you for tuning in. Um, this is a serious topic we're going to be talking about. A lot of people don't like to have this conversation, unfortunately, but we got an expert who knows the ins and outs of it. And it's before we even get into the whole, dramatic of it all. Liz, can you let everybody know what to do?
All right. So happy Sunday. Good evening. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being a part of our family, our audience, our neighborhood, basically. All right. So please, guys, do us a favor. Like, subscribe, share, send a link. Even if they can't tune in tonight, if we say something that you know somebody needs to hear, share it a couple days from now. We appreciate it either way. We do it for you, and we appreciate your help with everything that we do.
Yes. I know a lot of times when we go into the whole things, it's a little bit more happy, but like I said, the subject is kind of like a downer. I know for me, it's like, man, but we got to talk about it. But before I'm going to go ahead and do some current events real quick. And I'm not even going to go into a lot of current events. Um, I don't know for everybody who's a little bit older than me, and that I remember seeing this show. I want to say when I was an infant, but like around 2 or 3. But WKRP in Cincinnati, Howard Heisman, he just passed away. So I remember
Oh,
seeing him when I was like 3 or 4, but I definitely know the face. Um, Last week we didn't mention, but unfortunately, Ian Alexander, Regina King's son, he committed suicide, and that was definitely not expected. There were no signs. And then today we have Chelsea Chris, who won Miss USA. She was crowned in 2019, and she jumped and committed suicide. And they found her body and everything. And that's kind of like the segue, I guess, and going to what we're talking about. Unfortunately, these are not happy situations. But for myself personally, I lost somebody very close to me, a family member this week, and they passed away. And um, sometimes death is not expected, right? These things happen, though.
mhm.
Uh, COVID has just hit us, and we hear about it on the TV, and then all of a sudden, somebody may have COVID and they may pass away. Someone also told me that our elders are elderly now, and we're becoming our elders, and we're having to, take the lead role. And I didn't think about it at all. I know I was talking to you, Liz. You had somebody close to you just recently, and we're all hearing about this one has a heart attack, this one's passing away, this one's in here, this one's here. And how are we prepping with this? How are we dealing with this? Because this is something that's the inevitable. I brought on Miss Nestorine Blair. She has a lot of those questions, those answers for those questions, because it can be overwhelming. Um, Thank you, Miss Blair, for coming in and speaking with us. I'm definitely happy that you're here because I I'm actually we need prepping for this. We need to
Yes.
talk about this. So thank you once again. We also are going to drop in the National Suicide Hotline, and I'm going to do that right now because this is something that we do need to talk about because there are people that are losing their lives and we're not aware of. But thanks once again for coming in, and we'll also drop that number in again.
You're
The
welcome.
average cost of a funeral, Miss Blair, is $9,420, and it
Yep.
seems like that's without inflation.
Hmm.
Are we missing something? Are we preparing properly? What are we doing wrong? It seems like the when someone passes away, a lot of times we're not covered properly, and we're passing around the collection plate, asking for spare change. What's happening, Miss Blair?
Well, I good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me on. The biggest problem is that people are scared to get prepared for death, but they have to understand there are two things. You can make an appointment for everything in life, right? But you cannot make an appointment with death. You don't know when it's coming unless you plan to take your life. Now, when people die, they have to understand that the people who are left behind are the people who suffers the most, right? Because if you commit suicide, you're gone, then your family has to take up where you left off. If you get ill and you die, your family, it's always the people who are left behind. But the people who people don't want to plan for death, even they know it's inevitable, right? So I'm urging people to understand that you need to prepare for something that is coming, because that's something that's going to happen. Now, when you plan for it, it doesn't mean it's going to happen the day you plan for it, or because you plan for it, it's going to happen sooner. It's going to happen, so you might as well plan for it, right? When you get pregnant, you don't know if the baby is going to live or die at birth, right? But you plan for that birth. So why not plan for that? Because it's inevitable. Now, funerals are very, very costly. And a lot of people, because they don't prepare for it, then you got to do GoFundMe. And GoFundMe is not proper protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing too is that don't only prepare for death, you got to prepare for life, right? Because a lot of people are living now, but they're people have heart attack, stroke. Younger people, I see 20-year-old, 27, 30-year-old people who have cancer, stroke, heart attack. Younger people are having these things. And if you get a heart attack and you can't go back to work, who suffers? Your family. So these are all the things people got to prepare for. And then, yeah, death is maybe worse because now you're no longer here, but people need to also think about long-term situation, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to think about long-term care, because if you cannot work for 5 to 6 months, how does that affect your household,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If you
Mm-hmm.
pass away, how is the your loss of income going to affect your family? And it's not all about money, but I'm sorry, money is what makes the world go round right now, because if you can't pay your bills, what happens, right?
Exactly.
So it's not that it's a big lack of information, lack of education, and people need to understand that these things are not as crazy as people make them out to be, because they'll tell you they can't afford to get the insurance policy, but they can afford to get an iPhone, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
They can afford to get the latest Louis Vuitton bag.
Right.
They can afford to go buy a Benz instead of driving a less expensive car, but they're not preparing for life events. And death alone is not the only thing they need to prepare for. You need to prepare for what leads up to death also.
Before we go into any further questions, and definitely I do apologize for not introducing you properly. Miss Blair, can you give the audience a little bit of your background in reference to, like, because you have this knowledge, and I was like, yeah, tell us. And nobody knows. Why don't you know?
Right.
Well, okay, so I am, well, as most people can tell, I'm Jamaican. I'm British born, raised Jamaican. I've lived in this country for most of my life, but been in Orlando since 2000, and been in real estate since 2002. Became a real estate broker, owned my own company since 2010. But in 2015, my mom passed away, and it was you know and that was sad, right? But I don't know, for those faith people, for every adversity there's a seed of greatness if you look for it, right? And this also is something that propels me, because what I know now, if I had known then, we would have been in a better position when my mom got sick. So I came across a company called World Financial Group in 2015. And when I heard about what they do for families, their mission is no family left behind. I decided to partner with them because it also gave me more knowledge and more financial education so I could help my real estate family. Because in 2008, when everybody gave me their keys back and said they couldn't afford their homes,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was like, you get part of the American dream and now it's a nightmare. But what happened is, what I learned since I became part of the insurance industry is the education that I could have given those families, they would have still homes, right? So now, during the pandemic, nobody gave me their keys back, right? Because I showed them and educated them about what they need to do to stay financially secure. And it's funny, Cleo, because financial worries is one of the cause of death, because stress is what
Mm,
causes most illnesses. And most people are stressed because financially insecure, financially uneducated, and their marriages get broken up because of finances. And if
mm,
people are financially educated, we can avoid a lot of that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
And
So, before I pass the mic to Liz to ask her questions, I do have. Why do you think the conversation is just very, very uncomfortable to have? I run into people. I know people where they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I'll outlive you. I don't want to hear it. If you think about it, it's going to come. Don't you know energy is everything? And it's true, thoughts are things, right? But with that being said, it's kind of like it's a very taboo subject, especially within our community. Is it because it does cost to have, life insurance and the whole thing, or is it just like I don't want to talk about death because we are the highest rate of individuals who pass away?
well, it's like I said, it's lack of information. So when I sit to talk to a client, I'm not saying, okay, so let's plan your funeral. It's it's the way you deliver the information sometimes. Because if I sit with a family with young kids, I'm gonna talk about college, right? Your kid's going to college. And I'm gonna say, what happens, because what happens if you get sick, what happens if you're out of work long term,
Right.
how is your family going to survive, right? Now
Mhm.
we need to put something in place so that if anything happens to you, you're going to leave your family better than you found you were, right? Because
Mhm.
for every generation we should be getting better, not worse. Now
Mhm.
let's take for example the artist formerly known as Prince. Last year, his family had to give the government back $32 million because he did not prepare for this, right?
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yes. So
Okay.
he died, no will. What's his name? Boswick?
Chad Boseman, yeah.
Chad Boswick. His wife
Yeah.
still cannot get his money because he did not have a will in place and he died. Aretha
Mhm.
Franklin, the same thing.
Wow. So let's
So
talk about that real quick. Actually, before I talk about that, Liz, go ahead, because I'm gonna be like, what about this one? Go ahead, Liz. Go ahead, Liz.
So, and it is a hard conversation to have. I mean, who wants to talk about that, right? I had somebody reach out to me tonight and say, what is this about? Funeral arrangements? And I said, actually, it's about planning for every aspect of your life continuing without you. Because really and truly, it's not just about the funeral. I mean, you're dead. It's ceremonious. I get it. And you want to do right by the person that has passed and you want to do right for the family that's honoring them. But that is one day. And then life continues. You know what I mean? And so much of our identity is wrapped up in what's surrounding us. You know what I mean? And so I know when people say, tell me about yourself, I usually lead with, well, I'm a wife, I'm a mother. You know what I mean? And so my identity is wrapped up in that. What happens when I leave? That is still my life and it has to continue without me. But what does that look like? Right. And so a lot of times when we do start talking about, well, if I die tomorrow, play this song at my funeral. You know what I mean? Or make sure I'm buried in Brooklyn or whatever that sounds like to that person. A lot of times I find, and Miss Nestorine here, you can let me know if you feel like I'm on the wrong path here, but there's so much more to it. Where are my kids going? What
exactly.
I have a life insurance policy that's a lot bigger than my funeral cost. I mean, don't knock me out, y'all. But you know what I mean? But what is my intention with that money, right? And so do I want my house paid off? Do I want my kids' education paid off in my absence? Like, what do I plan to do with that? I mean, I know that Kia has parents that she helps out with, and I have parents I help out with. If I'm not here, who's stepping into that role? You
Exactly.
know, we're planning for that. A lot of parents worry about their kids and forget that they have parents that they're taking care of. If you have property, how is that going to be managed? If you don't have property, where your kids going to live? So, we have questions.
Yeah,
So
I'm glad. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I find, and a lot of men say, "Oh, I don't want an insurance policy because I'm not leaving any money to my wife so she can have her new boyfriend spend it." But you want
Ah,
the new boyfriend to take care of your kids, then, right?
That part.
So who's going to take care of your kids if you don't leave money to take care of your kids? So the new
Hmm.
boyfriend should take care of the kids with his money, but you can't leave, right? You can't be dead and jealous.
Ah,
You,
well,
you
thank you for keeping it very unfiltered. I
so it's,
appreciate
That
it's
was
that.
better for you
perfect.
to leave some money so your kids can, because guess what? You can specify exactly what happens with the money, right? So do that. But no, I'm not leaving money for them to take care of the new boyfriend.
Mhm.
I'm,
Yeah,
we're
you
gonna
can't
get
be that and jealous.
we're gonna get to the comments in a second, but with that being said, without saying the name of the bank, I work for a bank and I run into a lot of different situations. Now, I had no idea. Like I said, you get your life insurance and like, okay, something happens, it happens, and then that person's rewarded the money. But I had no idea about an estate because if you don't take care of your estate, the state will take care of your estate. And I had no
Exactly.
idea. I ran into a situation and this is the blandest generic scenario was a person passed away. Once the individual passes away, they're like, hey, I'm grieving, this is my sibling, I need to go ahead and close these accounts. Who are you? Oh no, I'm related, this is my blood. We don't care. Well, wait a second. Well, all that money sitting in there, what's going to happen? It goes to the state.
Great.
And to be able to have to deal with the customer and tell the customer that, and the customer's like, I am grieving, and you're telling me I have to fight with the state to pull out money, like I have to bury my loved one. Are you kidding me? So
Mhm.
no, I kind of even put it out of sight, out of mind. But before you address that in reference to the different things like wills and estates, let me just go to the comments real quick.
So Z chimed in. Good evening, everyone. Good evening,
Hey.
Z. Miss Toya said, great evening, Queens. I hope that's a reflection of your wonderful weekend so far. And so Tashia Nicholson chimed in with good evening, everyone. Nice seeing you.
Hello.
So Cash says, hey everyone. So hey Cash.
Hey.
So Toya said she better drop the mic.
Oh,
When
that was
she
about that comment about
got jealous.
you can't be jealous and give it.
Yes. It's your chimed in. She goes, now that's a word. LOL. Oh, yeah.
No, but can you go in reference to estates and meaning that okay, so I own some properties. I pass away, me and my husband. I was telling my sister, like, well, if my son is just going ahead and paying the mortgage, let's use that. Can he just take the place now because he's paying the mortgage? And she's like, no. How does that work? If you can
No,
explain.
so when you die, if you don't leave a will, you have to do what's called probate. Probate is saying everything you own is like turned over to the state and they decide who gets it.
Hmm.
So now if you owe things like students loan, certain debt, that's getting paid off
Wait, you gotta
before
pay, wait, you gotta pay the student loan back.
that's going to get paid off before your kids get anything to eat.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. I'm not putting my business out there. Go ahead.
So you can, if you don't, the best thing for you to do is have a will. Now I have access to and it's a funeral plan, it's a concierge funeral insurance plan where within that you're allowed to do a free will. So you can go in and just set your will up, print it off, get it notarized, and you're good to go. Now, most people don't want to do a will. It doesn't matter how much you own. You need to put down what it is you need to happen after you pass, right? So if it doesn't matter how much assets you have, a lot, a little bit, whatever, you need to specify exactly, I have this bank account, I need the money to go to this person. Because if you if you die and the bank finds out tomorrow that you passed, they're freezing your account, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So if you don't have a will, nobody can go to the bank and get that money.
Right.
It's going to be turned
Mm.
over to the state. Now, who's going to plan the funeral and what way? What are they going to use to plan it? Fried chicken, T-shirt sale, GoFundMe. why not just put it in place to say, if I die, this is what I need to happen to what with what I have.
Now, does a will cost something for somebody who's just completely new? I just found out myself because I'm a vet that I can go onto the VA and there's a free will, and then they'll do all that legal stuff for me. But not everybody's a vet per se.
Right.
So somebody who's brand new, what do they do? Like, okay, I want a will. What, where they get that will from?
So for me, I would suggest you get that funeral plan, because you get a free will, so that your
Okay.
funeral is paid for. You have a will. But if you want to go to a lawyer, they can charge you anywhere from $2,000 to $1,000. It depends on what you have and how much work it's going to cost them to put the will together.
Okay. So a will, because I've heard people tell me this, a will is not a piece of paper that you done found and you was like, I want, y'all to
Yeah,
play. There's a foot in the sky.
yeah.
That you
It's,
can't just
it's
put a paper together. Okay.
I would suggest you get it properly prepared.
Okay. No, because our people, they be funny. They be putting stuff on papers and folding it up. Like, I told you I wanted everything to be in blue. And you're like, what's this little paper? So the little papers are not counting. You're talking about something that's legitimate. And does
Yeah.
this paper will get notarized or it goes through a lawyer?
Usually, if it's notarized, it will stand. If a note, because if a note is not notarized, who knows who wrote it, right?
Mhm.
If your kid can do your signature and they sign your name, who knows it's not you that you signed it?
Got it.
So it has
Got
to be
it.
notarized.
Here's a question that came in.
So Tashia said, can't you add a secondary account holder to your bank accounts to avoid the bank taking ownership?
Yes, you can, but what are you going to do? Add your kid to everything?
Well, I was going to say this, since I do work for a bank, for consumer accounts, the answer is yes. For a business, if they weren't already on that business, the answer is
Yeah, you
no.
can't add business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people, and sometimes you'd be very surprised. Megan passes away, and you didn't even know Megan had some other stashes somewhere. And I know there was something else I wanted to ask you about for the power of attorney. Do you think we should always have one in play, or?
Well, I can, from experience, my dad had a major stroke a year and a half ago. And just before he had his stroke, we were talking about putting a power of attorney in place for him.
Okay.
And it so happened that he had the stroke before we did, and uh, it was messy trying to get this done at that point. So yes, if you can, I would suggest you get one, because
Okay.
we had to. Fortunately, I have a lawyer who works with me who was able to help me to get it done, but it was not very easy to get done.
We're gonna go about that because I know Liz had mentioned about reading your will earlier than waiting till later. We're gonna touch upon that, but there's two
Uh-huh.
parts of the question that came in.
So Z says, student loans cannot be discharged. It freaking sucks.
I heard that they follow you, but I was like, that's a lie. They don't follow you. Really? Do they do?
They do
But wow,
follow you. They follow
They will.
you.
wow.
To your
Mm-mm.
grave.
Literally.
So, all right. Ms.
Unless
Linda
they're forgiven, they follow you.
Wow.
right? It's Ms. Linda said, can you do your will if you get the papers from a county clerk or some other source?
You can. It's not hard to do a will. Like I said, you can prepare your will, but remember, you need to get this thing notarized. Most
Mm,
people think they could just write a note and it's a will. Oh, I put will at the top and I wrote it. No, it has to be notarized.
got it. Got it. Now, this, and thanks once again for still asking that question about wills. So Liz was making the statement to me earlier that she thinks that you should read the will out and like in advance, meaning let's just say you have properties or you have money and you have this and this and this. Well, let everybody know what's going on so it's not a surprise at the end. So now Bobby's not fighting with Derek and these things like, I can't believe mama gave you 50% of the so and so, but then again, here's my point of view on that. What happens if you're not dividing things out equally? And I'm looking, well, wait a second. You think I'm incompetent, mom? Why did you give him instead of me? So what do you feel about that? Should you do
That,
that stuff in
that's
advance?
that's personal though, because listen, and there are people out there who will just hit you off if they know they're in a well, right?
It's
Because if
true.
you have $1 million policy and you have a kid, I mean, and I hope to God nobody on this is like that, right? But you
Yeah,
have
right.
some families who wish you were dead, right? So why are you going to push it? Now you're going to tell them I'm leaving you $1 million. Oh, well, she needs to go so I could get this money. I
Oh
would,
no.
you got to be careful with stuff like that.
Oh no.
Well,
You got to
well,
be
yes.
careful.
To
So
be fair, when
to
I was
me,
talking about that,
it's called a last will and testament for a reason. That is something that happens after you die.
Okay, okay.
well, I wasn't necessarily speaking about the money aspect of it, right? So obviously, you don't want to tell people like, listen, if I'm out the picture, you have $1 million. That's not anybody's intention. But I do believe, in my case, I have a 9 year old, right? I don't want it to be a surprise to you that my 9 year old is going to land on your doorstep. I do feel
No,
like I should
yeah,
have
I
some
agree with that, but
conversations,
that's not something that you need to discuss. You need to discuss that before you put it in a will, because what happens if this person doesn't want to take care of your 9 year old?
which is why I feel like we should have that
Okay.
conversation. So
So
that's more
that
so what
you
I was
should have a
speaking about.
conversation
Yes,
about
Okay.
that before. Yeah,
right.
but
You know,
Okay.
your life insurance policy, your bank accounts, all that stuff, I wouldn't discuss that before,
Okay.
because yeah, it could get ugly sometimes.
Okay. And no. And it's interesting because you would think to yourself, well, I'm going to go ahead and say that, this individual that I associate with, let's just say it's Sister Susan, and I love their spiritual beliefs. I love their this and their morals. I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, let's have this conversation. I want to drop my little one off to you if this happens, to me in those situations, what happens if Sister Susan is like, sorry, and you have nobody else? I mean, I guess that's the kind of another reason why people don't want to talk about it, because especially if people have kids or
Well, then
little,
that's why you should talk about it, because what
I agree.
happens to your kids? They're going to become foster kids. If
ah,
Mary doesn't want them and Mary's who you wanted to have them, I spoke to a lady a couple of weeks ago and I said to her, what happens to you if what happens to your kids? She has 3 kids. If something happens to you, she said, God is going to take care of them. And I said to her, okay, lady, do you have any idea who God is going to put them with? So you could tell me. I'm like, God is going to take
Ain't it the
care of them,
truth,
really?
y'all? So yeah,
no, it's
I'm like,
unfortunate.
help God out, help him out and tell him who you want to have these kids, because God is very busy. Why he
I
gonna
want
decide who go your kids go to?
I want to throw in there not just your kids, because some people leave things to their dogs, or they want somebody to take care of little Fluffy or little Max, the kitten. So a lot of people may not be animal lovers, and you're like, well, hey, can you go ahead and do this? I mean, this is a touchy subject, and I'm glad we're having it, because more and more people, we're hearing of these things happening. I wanted to ask you about advanced healthcare plans. Is that very similar to power of attorney?
What is that?
Advanced healthcare plan for when people are ill?
Advance that you're going to a different level. I'm not
Okay.
privy to advanced healthcare plan, but what I
Okay.
know is I talk about long-term care, right? So
Okay.
long-term care, a lot of people think that if they have health insurance, they're good to go. Health insurance takes care of hospital bills. It doesn't pay your light bill, your water bill. If you have
mhm,
a long-term care situation, and anybody 60, I think the statistic says 75% of people over 60 is going to have a long-term care situation at some point. Long-term care
mhm,
situation means you're going to be ill for more than 90 days at a time, right? Now, for 90 days, if you don't have income coming in, the bank is not going to say, okay, I'm sorry, you were ill, you don't have to pay your mortgage. They still need their money, right?
mhm,
So
Hmm.
we need to have things in place that in case you have a long-term care situation, the finances are still there to keep you in the lifestyle you were accustomed to.
mhm.
I have questions, but go ahead, Liz. I'm not gonna say no. I'm like,
No, I mean, I really appreciate your candidness, Miss Nestorine. I like sincerely do. But even going I'm gonna stick to the whole, letting people know what your intentions are or what your desires are, because your intentions are very different than what might happen if you don't plan accordingly, right? And
Right.
so, would you suggest, and Key, as a parent, I want you to chime in too, and audience, everybody, let me know what you think, right? Would you suggest having these conversations with your children? If so, how young? I mean, you don't want to scare them. Listen, mommy's gonna die. You know what I mean? That's not really it. But I just feel like there's some conversations that we should have. We talk to them about everything else. If there's a fire, do this, right? If somebody's banging on the door that you don't know, do this. If I'm not here, do this. You know what I mean? Is that a conversation that you would encourage? At what age should you start having that conversation with your kids? What do you guys think about that?
So for me, it depends on how you approach the subject, right? So when my
Mm-hmm.
kids were younger, I taught them my sister's phone number, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
told them, I said, if anything happens to me, call Auntie Janet, right? So
Okay.
they know that she's going to be the go-to person. I made sure they had a good relationship with her. So, they would go spend time with her. They have a good rapport with her. So, guess what? If something happens to me, they're comfortable talking to her, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to say, oh, if mommy dies, you go live with Auntie Janet. It depends on how you deliver the information, right?
Good point.
So, that's
Okay.
how I feel about it. If
Okay.
something happens, and so when they say, okay, what happened? Let's say mommy just faints or mommy has an accident. You never know. Just call Auntie Janet. So it's how you deliver the information.
Yeah, I think for myself to answer that question, I have taught my daughter, the little one, what the word passes away means. She doesn't get the concept that anybody could pass away at any time, but she definitely understands that old people can pass away.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's still trying to get the 911 together. Sometimes she gets 911, sometimes it's 119, but just still working with her so she can remember those things. I know my older kids definitely we have plans in play. And of course they should know by now what's going on, but I do think you should be able to approach that child on those levels just to kind of explain. And also, I had to do it because I'm just a prepper by heart. I don't know if you know this, Miss Blair, but I stay with emergency contact cards. Let me get in there. I don't want
Oh
to.
wow, that's
you
awesome.
know, just having every little thing noted just in case, because I'll do my shows about prepping and natural catastrophes, and I just happened to be watching a zombie show earlier, so I'm already on the go. But now enough about that. There's a comment that just came in.
All right. Mr. Winslow says, I think in our community, we rely on God to take care of it, failing to realize He isn't going to walk down from heaven to personally help, but rather give you the tools to take care of it yourself. Absolute fact. Yes.
It's heartbreaking. I can say when I hear, well, you know what, it's going to be in God's hands. I think that if a person ends up leaving this earth plane, and you leaves you with all that burden, it's very selfish. You know, I'm,
Irresponsible.
because you, especially, I'm not talking about sudden things, sudden things you don't know, but especially if you had time to prep and know. I know my father tomorrow would make 4 years, excuse me, 5 years passing.
Five.
5 years passing. And it's crazy. Like, wow, my daddy passed away. I know that me and my sister were going up to see my father, go through everything he was going through every weekend. We would fly up to go see him in the hospital. And that costs money just to pick up without any plans and just pick up and fly. And I know for that situation leading to his death, to his memorial, I had to pull out from my 401k, just because we had nothing in plan. And that was a cremation that we ended up doing. And you pass the hat away or hat around and you do the GoFundMe pages like you're saying. And wait a second, Sandra donated $25. Well, what the, I just seen you on that cruise, and then now all of a sudden you beefing with Sandra because you're trying to figure it out. Like, I seen you on a cruise, but you donated $25. I mean, these times when a person is passing, it definitely is something to you got to get your orders in affair, in order, your affairs in order, excuse me, because you can break relationships that way if you're
Mm-hmm.
not doing
Yeah, and
things.
it's not Sandra's responsibility to help you bury your dad, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
people get,
Yes.
yeah. It's
Yeah. No, no, it's true. But I can say that I can say that in a general sense, you're dealing with so much to begin with, especially maybe you was close with the individual, right?
yeah.
And then you have to sit and you have to find out. And that leads me to a question. I was talking to my cousin, and she said she's kind of has a Excel spreadsheet and has all this information on. But this information, basically, if I was to leave at this very moment, could you just log into my passwords? Could you go in and find where the insurance is? Where is this? Where is that? And just kind of go in where I am, because right now you kind of know where your mess is. You kind of know where the chaos. Is there something do you have like something like that yourself? Like if something happens to you, they could just step right into your shoes and log in and get that information that they need, kind of smooth.
Well, for me, I have that funeral plan I'm talking about, and
Oh, okay, that's a part.
what they also provide is it's like Dropbox. They call it Tenzing, right? So you go
Hmm.
into Tenzing, you put all your information in, and when you set that account up, it you choose two people who can access it when you die. So it doesn't matter how private the information is. After I die, I don't care. So I can put anything in there, save all my paperwork, my bank account, my passwords, everything in there. And upon my death, two people can access that.
Oh wow! And what is this? I didn't know it was all a part of this. Now, what is this called? A part of that?
It's a plan from a company called Everest, and it's reasonable. It's a reasonable cost for it, and you can get from $5,000 to $50,000 worth of coverage. Now, the beauty of it is that you don't have to be versus regular life insurance that you have to be really healthy to get. You don't really have to be very healthy to get that one. There's some people who don't qualify for it, but most people do. And they have two different types. So you can either get what they call immediate, which means if you die within 24 to 48 hours, your beneficiary is going to get those funds to bury you, right?
Hmm.
And then they have what's called a return of premium. So if you're going through certain illnesses right now, they'll give you the coverage, but if you die within 3 years, they do what's called a return of premium. So they give you all the money you put into it plus 10% interest, right? No, there's no bank giving you 10% interest.
No.
Hmm.
Now, the thing about it is if you have a life insurance policy and you die, most of the times you if you don't have the money up front to pay for a funeral, you have to take that life insurance policy to the funeral home. They hold it, right, until the funds is released from the insurance company. Now most insurance company takes a couple weeks to pay out a death benefit. Depends on how you die. Sometimes it's longer if they have to do an investigation, because if you have a life insurance policy and you commit suicide within the first 3 years, they're not paying out the death benefit, because people have been known to buy insurance policy, then kill themselves so their families could be better.
What in the
Yeah.
world? What type of
So that's why that rule came in. There's
Yeah.
people do a lot of stuff, right?
wow?
So in an insurance policy takes a while to pay out. This funeral policy pays out within 24 to 48 hours. Now, it also has another feature to it where you can go ahead and plan everything you want to happen at your funeral, and they will make sure that that is, put in place when you die. So it's called a concierge funeral service. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to plan my funeral. Let me tell you something. If I can plan my funeral down to the last minute, I'll do it, because it takes away from the people who are suffering, right? Because I had to plan my mother's funeral, and this
Hmm.
sibling didn't want this to happen. This sibling want her to wear this color, and it's so crazy, right?
Hmm.
So why not just plan it? Your kids, whoever you're leaving behind, they're already grieving. They don't have to worry about that, right?
Hmm.
So it's much easier, because it's very, very stressful to plan a funeral. I don't know if anybody on here has ever planned one, but I have. So I know it's very stressful.
Well, I'm glad you said that because thinking about it, a lot of times companies, if you're working for a corporation, they're giving you maybe 3 to 4 bereavement days. And if you're left with the burden of planning someone's funeral, you have to maybe take the bereavement, then maybe put your own PTO, and then use a weekend and just kind of plan accordingly just so don't you lose your job because you're dealing with
Exactly.
so much. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you'll have a sibling or a cousin and say, "Oh my God, she didn't like the color black, and you want to put a black outfit on this person." And you
Mhm.
have these little quarrels and these different things. I know my pet peeve because I've been to some funerals and I've seen things. I hate when everybody just kind of starts claiming the individual. Like you ain't talked to Sandra. I'm gonna use Sandra. I don't know who Sandra is, but you ain't talked to Sandra in like 32 years. And now here you come to about, oh, Sandra, why? And I'm like, where you and now me and you are fighting over maybe Sandra's teddy bear or whatever, but you ain't talked to Sandra in 32.
Exactly. And you the thing is too, a lot of relatives pop up when somebody died. You never heard about them, but they heard you're dead and they just show up.
Mhm.
So you gotta just plan, people. Just plan.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I was supposed to mention is that when you have a life insurance policy and you take it to that funeral home, the cost of the funeral goes up, right?
Mhm.
Oh,
Because
what?
now they know you have this money. They
Right.
charge you extra for everything.
Mhm.
So this funeral company that I'm talking about, they can even do shopping for you for funeral homes to see what's the most cost effective one.
Wait, so you're telling me right now, if the person's shopping for a casket and the casket was $3,000, and then now they see that you got a policy that's like now it's 350, or what? I mean,
Yes,
like what?
ma'am. Hmm.
Wow.
It makes sense though.
Because you're grieving. When you're
Right.
grieving, you're not thinking that that's unreasonable, right? You want your family to go the best in the best and look the best. You're not
Right.
thinking of the costs at that time. And an average funeral right now costs, you're saying $9,000. That's really inexpensive. They cost like $20,000. Each state is different. But
Yeah,
I
that
was
was the
looking at something. Yeah, my mom's funeral was like $25,000.
hmm hmm
It's expensive.
It is. It is. I forgot to mention when I said that it's per state. Every
It's per
state has
state.
their own different things, and I know that the industry itself has been booming ever since COVID. Of course, we shouldn't capitalize on people's deaths, but when you have people going in, go ahead, Liz.
I mean, I find it interesting that when you say to somebody, if you were to just toss out to somebody, if you won $1 million tomorrow, what would you do? Oh my gosh. They've been thinking about it. They know the answers. They know the first thing they would do, the second thing they would do, everything else. The odds of you winning $1 million are next to zero. Then you have the same person in the same breath, and you say, hey, if you die tomorrow, what should that look like? No, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. Well, the odds of you dying are 100%. So,
Exactly.
it's so strange the things that we would waste time on, right? So we've all thought about it, right? If I won the lotto, most people think about what they would do if they won the lotto, didn't play lotto, right? But if you're living, you're going to die. You know what I'm saying? And so just get real and have the conversation. It's uncomfortable. So get this, do it right the first time so you don't have to keep having that uncomfortable conversation. Now, how often should you update your how often should you update that? And then also, how complicated does it get when you have blended families?
Oh,
Because there's
especially
not a lot of nuclear families around. Let's call a spade a spade. Uncomfortable, but true, right? I've seen people where, dad died. He just married his 20 years younger girlfriend, and now the kids want to freeze her out. Or you've seen situations where the wife has control of everything and freezes the kids out, and now the kids
oh
are in a
yeah,
home. Or
yeah.
you've got, the evil stepmother with the
Not the evil
stepkid.
stepmom.
The evil
Is the
stepmother.
evil stepmama named Sandra? I'm sorry.
It's not Sandra Key. It's
I'm
not.
just.
Sandra can't do
I don't know who Sandra
everything.
is.
My stepkids.
Well, it all boils down to what does daddy want to happen when daddy dies, right? So he
Mhm.
needs to put in his will what is supposed to happen. So that and that's what happens when they die without a will. The wife
Mhm.
wants to do this, and I have a situation right now where a client of mine called me. And she said, my dad died and we need to sell his house. But we just found out that his sister? Yeah, his sister forged his signature, put her name on the house like a
What?
week before he died.
Wow.
Fortunately for her, I don't know how they got wind of it, and she switched it because she realized she could have gone to jail because the daughter had his driver's license, so there was no way she could have gotten it notarized. The man was in the hospital, right? So these things happen. So if you don't prepare, because if he had a will, there was no way she could have done that. And if she hadn't taken her name back off, this house would have belonged to her and not the kids,
Wow.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's great.
there are crazy things that are happening.
Mhm.
Let's go to some of those comments real quick.
So, and Tashia said, don't forget, if the deceased had a disease like cancer at death, they charge more to prep the body.
Wow. Did not know that.
And if
Wow.
it's something infectious, it's even more so. So she mentioned cancer, but let it be something like AIDS. In 2020, if you had coronavirus, oh my God, the premiums for prepping that body because
Yeah.
you know, it's
Wow.
contagious or, whatever. So yeah. Ms. Toya said, yes, Kia, I had a hard-headed client go behind me and sign over the policy to the funeral that tried to get over on them, not realizing that they'll receive the entire death benefit.
Wow. And you know what the crazy thing is? Just hearing this, just hearing that statement right there, you would think that the actual funeral home, even if a person made the mistake, let's just say a person honestly made a mistake and signed it over to them or whatever, they was grieving, they didn't see, you would think that out of the kindness of the individual's heart, they're like, oh my God, man, you signed it over. Let's just let's take our money for the funeral and we're gonna give you the rest. But people are just everybody's trying to pinch off of you in every
Yep.
way and take advantage of you being weak in this vulnerable state.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
the grieving process makes you irrational. You know what I mean? And I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just saying that you're dealing with something that you didn't think you deal with. That chances are you're not properly prepared to deal with. That I mean, the grieving process has its phases that you're going to go through, and in that process, there's moments of being irrational. And then if you are being too rational, people are looking at you sideways like you're way too cool, way too calm, way too, don't sit there and try to bargain with the funeral director. Your family would have a fit. Like you're trying to get a 2-for-1 funeral. What's going on? You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about that. I have another question. I don't know, Ms. Nesrine, if you can answer that. But what if you have something like a video will? Is that a thing?
A lot of things are done online now because that was part of when we had to get my dad's power of attorney. That was part of it. It was a video, so it was a video to say, yes, I'm having my daughter become my, power, giving power of attorney to my daughter. So I think it depends. I would have to get the details on that, but I do think you can do a video.
Mm.
Okay.
Because let's say if
Okay.
you're in a hospital situation, but I think you have to have a lawyer present and there's some kind of setup that you have to do to make sure the video is legit, right? But yes, I think you can do that.
So, and just to kind of wrap it up, because I know that you have other engagements, Miss Blair, and I know we're going to get to last words with Liz. But with that being said, I just want to put out there, guys, you want to make sure that we're talking to your families, having these conversations in advance. They're not easy. We are now seeing our elders get sick and things are happening and oh my God, this and this. I want to say it's just the end of January, and I've heard about a lot of people that are suffering on the cusp or on the edge, and families are losing loved ones. And this is a serious topic to have, but that's what family comes in. How to be able to communicate and talk and certain be aware of the state that you're living in. I know that when my father passed, my sister and I, because he passed in one state, it wasn't that it went everything. The decisions went to the oldest sibling. It went to both of us, and we had to make those mutual decisions. And those are conversations to be had instead of one person have all that burden on them. We shared that. and just be aware of what's going on. I did want to give you out your information just in case anybody had any questions and said, hey, what's that? Because I know I did, like, what's the Everest? What's this family planning?
You got
What
to
is
call
going
me to get
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I want to go, if I may, put your email and your phone number here so individuals can give a call and get that information. And thank you so
Sure.
much for giving us this information and this insight. Um, Before we go to Liz with her last words, did you have anything to say extra, Miss Blair?
I just want to tell people to, get prepared, get for life, get prepared for death. You need to get prepared if you're gonna live. Would you like to live, right? But you can't work and sit and watch your kids get taken away and go to foster care while you're in a nursing home or in some long-term care situation. Get ready for life, get ready for death. It's happening and it's gonna happen. We can't escape it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, death, you cannot make an appointment for it, so we never know when it's coming. So we just need to make sure we're ready and make sure we're leaving people, leaving a legacy for our family and not debt.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So,
Thank
just get it done. If Why wouldn't you want to leave and have the mortgage paid off when you die? Why wouldn't you want to leave and have the student's loan paid off? But if you get an insurance policy, get insurance is not as expensive as people think. If you
you.
cannot afford to get permanent policy, get a term policy. It's same coverage, right? We have a term policy where if you get a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, it pays out a lump sum while you're alive. I've had people who have tapped into their term with living benefits and have gotten 50,000. I know of people who have gotten 250,000 out of their policy to take care of them during a long-term care situation. So
Mhm.
if it's out there, get it. Get that funeral plan. If you don't want your life insurance policy to go to the funeral home, get your funeral money. If you walk cash, cash is king, right? So just get ready, guys. It's
Yes.
inevitable.
We
People are out there who can help you, so get it done.
let's read the last comments and then Liz, of course, with your last words.
All right. So Alistair chimes in. He said, "Great topic, great show, ladies. It's very informative."
Thank you.
Yes. All right. And so Miss Linda said, "Very informative show with a topic I very seldom think about."
Yeah.
We're all
It's
guilty.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're all guilty. Don't
Guilty
forget.
as charged. Yes. And so Cash says this stuff is a must do. I'm going to give myself a deadline for getting these things in place. Okay,
Yes.
Cash, can I challenge you? What's the deadline?
Mm. Tell me too.
There you go. So, and Allison said, perhaps most people don't have wills because they're unaware of how to get started. What's the easiest way to go about establishing a will? And I think Ms. Nestorine gave us a little insight into that earlier on the show. Ms. Anokia said that through the VA, she has a benefit in place where she can actually have a will drawn up. There's, I'll give you a chance to answer that question again, Ms. Nestorine.
Okay, so we have a funeral concierge plan that if you get that policy, you can have a free will done, or you can go to an attorney to get one done.
Okay, thank you. And if you have any questions, once again, this is her information here,
Mhm.
her phone number and her email, where you can just shoot out those questions.
Yep.
She's only going to respond to serious questions, people. If you're out there and watching, this is a very professional individual right here. But
Right.
I also want to go ahead and drop the National Suicide Hotline once again, just because we are hearing more and more people passing away, and these are celebrities and different things that you see, but we know people and we're around them, and just because we may not see the signs, they may be there. So just always kind of just have that open eye out, just to check on loved ones, somebody that you haven't really talked to in a minute. And just because they're smiling doesn't mean that they're not depressed. So definitely it's something that has to be talked about more and more. Liz.
Hey again. I'm so happy that we had this conversation and we're actually doing it at a time where we can smile about it rather than at a time where we're crying and trying to figure things out. So I'm so happy about that, right? I know that Alistair's last question to us was, what's the easiest way to go about establishing a will? I mean, don't we Google everything? Like, I mean, honestly, right? Like, Google is in fact free. So if you have a valuable resource like Miss Estarine, who we now have direct access to, we can call her and send an
Yes,
email to,
thank
tap
you.
into that. But I mean, worst case scenario, I just did a really quick search. Get this, and I hate to put names out there, but you have things like LegalZoom. Apparently, Wells Fargo has a free estate planning guide that you can get. I'm sure other banks have things like that that are in place. How to get started. I mean, all I did was typed in will planning. That was it. Right. And I mean, and the wealth of resources that came up. I mean, we'll look up absolutely anything else, right? Don't ask what's for dinner tonight. You know what I mean? Or anything like that. We'll look that up in a heartbeat. If it's important to you, get to it. You know what I mean? So that's my last word on that. Thank you so very much, Miss Blair. I sincerely appreciate you coming on. I know that it was very important. I think it's one of the most important shows that we've done to date here, if I'm being honest. Now, before we go, please, guys, I'm asking, pretty please, go to grownhonestconcepts.com. I have decided, and forgive me, I'm going to lose my ladiness for just a moment, right? But I am going balls to the walls this year. All right. And so $5 from every single shirt sold on the website is going to go towards a book scholarship for minorities college student. Also, if you're out there, if you know anybody that is in school, it can be an adult, it could be an incoming freshman, an outgoing senior. If they're in college and they're paying for their own books, we want to help them. So last year we were able to come up with about $700 collectively
Yep.
between the T-shirt sales, unfiltered and intentional, a couple of donations. $700 goes a long way to paying for textbooks for college. It's something that has been placed on my heart. I'm adamant about. If you want to contact me directly and come up with a different idea or have any strategies on how we can grow this year, let me know. The $5 from the sale of every shirt. I don't know if you guys can see this. That's what I'm wearing tonight. It says, "You are a future ancestor. Advance the legacy."
Yes.
So last year it was one particular design. It said Black Future Month. And if you bought one of those shirts, I appreciate you. We did $5 from the sale of that particular design. This year, it's every shirt. It does not matter which one you go with. If you buy it between today and February 28th, $5 from the sale of that shirt will go towards books for minority college students. So please help me out.
Yes,
Please.
yes, yes. Thank you. Honestconcepts.com and definitely see if we can help a student because we're all about helping the community any way possible. And last but not least, make sure you like and subscribe on our YouTube page because we're doing this for you. And like I said, these are topics that I think affect the community. And one last thing, one thing that Miss Blair did mention was if you're going to get a will, go get that thing notarized. It's
That part.
very simple. And with the last comment that came in, I think Cass said April the 1st, he did it
Hashtag
himself.
April 1st. All right. I'm going to check back in with you, Cash. April
Yes, yes,
1st. I
yes.
got
We
it
got to
down.
get these wills and we got to get our lives in check because that is something that waits for nobody, man. Which is time. But thank you guys. Love you. Thanks, Miss
Thank you for
Blair.
having me on.
Thank you.
Bye.